who is considered one of the main missiologists. Coming from another place.
You brought that out of there. I wasn't saying before.
Tells the story, true story, a business story about the Zenith Drilling Company. And what the Zenith Drilling Company did is they made drill bits. And for a long time, they were the leader of their industry. They did a lot of innovative things, tungsten drill bits. But as happens, their competitors were starting to catch up. And so they hired a new CEO, and he got all of the leaders to come together from this business for this 3-day crisis conference to come up with the answer of what is our mission. So these leaders, I'm sure probably in your churches you've done things like this. They broke into small groups, they brainstormed, and then finally after 3 days they came together and they said, you know what, it's not enough to make drill bits. Our mission is to make the best drill bits in the world. Pretty lofty aspiration, right? The CEO, for the first time, came to the microphone and said, no, our mission is not to make the best drill bits in the world. Our mission is to make the best holes in the world. And by doing that, they opened themselves. They were able to focus on what their real mission was. It was not the tool, it was the end result. And they became the leader in that industry by going into things like lasers. They still made drill bits, but they were using other things too. And that company is now the best hole-making company in the world. A lot of times what we focus on is on making the best churches in the world. And there is nothing wrong with that. That's great. But our mission is not to make the best churches in the world. Our mission is to make wholeness in the world. Having the best churches is one way of fulfilling that mission.
And we are each going to take an opportunity to tell you a little bit about a ministry that embodies this understanding of not being the best church in the world necessarily. Some even won't be about churches, but about how to build wholeness in the world. I had the experience, my name is Reverend Eric Posa, I had the experience of visiting a couple of years ago a church in North Carolina, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. It happened to be a Methodist church, Williamson's Chapel West. It's a planted church, broken off intentionally from a larger congregation. But at the West Campus, they did something amazing. No building. They worshiped in a high school auditorium most of the time, except once every 8 weeks to 12 weeks. One Sunday every 2 or 3 months, and you never knew when it was. You'd walk into church, and you would not be handed an order of service. You'd be handed a map. And you'd be told, we're not having worship today. Meet us here, and we're going to serve our community. Sometimes it would be park cleanup. Sometimes it would be helping out at a local shelter. It could be any kind of project, but it was a way for the people of that church to have an opportunity to live out their faith in a place that was part of their community, but was not simply within their walls, and it was an opportunity for them to live out their call and their mission to be more faithful, not just inside their church services, but in the world as a whole.
I'm largely here to sell t-shirts. I So my name's Jake Morrill. I'm the minister of the church in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. A lot of fans of the nuclear industry out there. And I guess one of the things I want to say is that looking out, I'm sort of humbled that it's me with the microphone, because I'm seeing, people like Vicki Weinstein, who repeatedly online brings us back to the call of God in our lives. And I'm looking at Lincoln Statler here, who I met in Tucson, Arizona, when there was a room full of people watching worship like this, and I saw these hands up in the front like this, and I was like, I want to know that guy. So he came and was with us for a while, and as an apprentice minister, and was doing all this stuff that flouted the bylaws and policies that have sort of shaped my life for so long. And he made me very nervous, which was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And so, meeting these people who kept surrendering to the call of love on their lives was very helpful for me in the last few years. And I'll talk about parish ministry later on in the workshop, but I want to talk about one of the ways that it's led me, this idea of loving the hell out of the world. The choice between going to heaven or a discussion about heaven, our choice is to go to hell and until hell is emptied out. And living in Oak Ridge, which is a town with a lot of military people in it, so here comes this hippie vegetarian to serve the church. Okay, guys, let's be, all this stuff, and then all these military people are challenging me about my relationship to the military early on. And my thoughts about it and assumptions and all this stuff. And then people are coming to the congregation, walking in and wanting to talk with me about their experiences. They're coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and all this thing, and they're talking to me about both this great nobility, this profound service, and also they're talking about what it is like to walk around in hell. What it is to live in that kind of suffering. So 2 weeks ago, I took my oath of office to be a chaplain in the Army Reserve with the loving support of my congregation, who, as I think about it, has always been in some ways they've always been a step ahead of me on this thing. So, I've got their support. And I want to tell you that as I follow this call to go where there is the hell of suicide, of sexual assault, of PTSD, and there is also the grace of nobility and honor, and talk about focus on mission. So it's all there. And I want to talk to you and just tell you that following my call right now has me a little bit scared. As a matter of fact, I'm a little bit terrified about less so the big things you might think about, but I don't even know military jargon. I can't even hang out there with. I know I'll learn, but it's that. But I am called, if I want to be a vessel of love, a vehicle of love, and bring it to where some of hell is on earth. I'm following that call. Let me make this last footnote, though, that we are not saying that missional ministry is doing community ministry. In fact, I think most of it, I'll speak for myself, I would refute that sort of binary difference between community ministry and parish ministry. Rather, it is the ministry that asks first the question why, and then follows up with how. First asks about the whole, and then is looking for, well, what kind of drill bit do we need?
So some of you may be wondering about why Red Pill Brethren, right? Has anyone here seen The Matrix? Anyone? Okay. So in The Matrix, there's this pivotal scene where two pills are offered to a character. One is red, one is blue. If you take the blue one, you just go back to sleep and everything continues the way you've always known it. But if you take the red pill, you can't go back. You are going to see the world in a completely different way. And even if you want to go back, you can't. And what happened is those of us getting into this missional church movement, we started talking and we realized that for all of us, this wasn't just some sort of, oh, that's a new project. That might, that's a new way of doing things. That could be interesting. For all of us, it was a red pill moment where we began envisioning church in a different way. And for me, what it was is I was in seminary, and one of my professors was telling me a little bit about this missional church movement. And he said that the people who were in it, rather than seeing faraway lands, South America, Africa as foreign lands, they realized that where we live right now is a culture that is usually foreign to most of our values. And that we are called to be missionaries right here, right where we live. And don't be afraid of the word missionary. Now I will tell you, if you have an idea that to be a missionary means to convert an area, oh yeah, we do. But it's not about converting people specifically to be Unitarian Universalist. It's about converting people to our values because we believe in ours that much. And you can do it in a very dramatic way. One of the Red Pill Brethren, who's at the UUCF communion service right now, we lovingly call him Papa Bear, is Reverend Ron Robinson, who has actually moved to what we call an abandoned part of the empire and is changing the world there. But the big thing is to go into your own spheres of influence. And at my church right now, I'm at our multi-site congregation, First Unitarian Houston, senior minister Daniel O'Connell there. Reverend Bonnie Richard is also at one of the other campuses, and we have assistant minister Kathleen Ellis. And at my campus, Copperfield, there are 2 members, probably more, but 2 that I'll talk about, who specifically are living this missionary life in their own day-to-day life, their own sphere of influence. Houston is an oil and gas town, and so one works for BP, which, you kind of think, kind of conservative company, right? She got onto an inclusivity team, and she has created a team from that company that are going to be marching in the Pride Parade. And it's like she had a goal of like 50, already it's up to 100, everyone's talking about that. That's being a missionary into a foreign culture, let me tell you. And I have another one, Tracy Cook, who is a teacher. I won't go into all the details, but she had an idea about how to change the way to teach children math. And it was really, and this is in public school, and one thing that it meant was throwing away all the worksheets. So you can imagine she got a bad review. But her students all started doing better. But she was, of course, she got a bad review. She was questioning herself. But in her church, she had people who were asking her, well, do you think you're doing the right thing? Yeah, I do. And they strengthened her. And I think this is the big part of being missional, is that the purpose of church is to strengthen our souls so that we can go out and strengthen the world. And Tracy it has gone beyond her school, and it really is revolutionizing math education.
I spent most of 2012 as the director of a coalition of churches in the inner city of Fort Worth. It was called the South Central Alliance of Churches. And we had 12-member churches ranging from West Side Unitarian all the way on one side, all the way over to the United, not the United Church of Christ, but the Church of Christ on the other end of the theological spectrum.
Pardon me, could you identify yourself?
Oh, hi.
Stand up to speak.
Sure.
With you in the previous.
I'm Tony Lorenzen. This is Joanna Crawford, Eric Posa, and Jake Morrill, and Beth Ellen Cooper.
Hi.
Hi. And so, my friend Robin was the pastor of a Presbyterian church in downtown Fort Worth, and she told me about what her congregation had done and asked me to be the director of this coalition. And this is the story that got me to say yes. Robin was the pastor of Hemphill Presbyterian Church on Hemphill Street in this rundown neighborhood of Fort Worth. Used to be a really good part of town, upscale, wealthy, and over the years has turned into the opposite. And the old Hemphill Presbyterian Church had found itself over the years down to 40 members and averaging about 20 people on Sunday morning. So they started to talk about what the heck can we do? And they decided to close their church down. Because their church stood in the neighborhood of great need in Fort Worth. What they did is they sold the building, emptied their endowment, bought a building a block down the street, turned it into a community center, where they feed people and provide free eye care and dental care to homeless people and children, and run a clothing ministry. All the members became members of First Presbyterian downtown, but they all basically went to church on Wednesday night at the community center, as did I. It was part of my job. I did spiritual direction there on Wednesday nights. And they decided that in dying to themselves, they would rise again in the community, give that community what it needed. My office was located down the street at the Church of Christ. And the Church of Christ and I had very different theologies. But you know, I didn't bug them and they didn't bug me about my Jesus with the rainbow halo on my desk in a frame. So we taught each other, you know. I learned that you don't dance and have instrumental music in the church if you want to do a prayer service. I'm like, all right, not my thing, but okay. But we got along really well on one point. And this is where we came together in the mission, the why we were there. The mission of that church was very simple. It was to be the center of mercy, mission, and transformation in that neighborhood. So that's what they did. They put in a community garden. They fed 800 families a week. I gave away clothes. I gave away shoes to people who didn't have any. I got prescription medicine for people. Our theologies were different. Our mission was the same. Because churches don't have a mission. The beloved community has churches.
So you've heard some of our testimonies. Now we want to explain a little bit more about what missional is. First of all, missional is a spectrum. I think you're already getting that by hearing our different examples of it. But three things that come through are that it is incarnational, relational, and positional. Now what incarnational means is that you start from your deepest held beliefs, but those beliefs have to take a form. If you just have these great beliefs but you don't do anything with them, then they're not really beliefs, are they, right? They're just kind of platitudes, nice ideas. Incarnation means that however you understand what is deepest and most true, perhaps you call it God, perhaps for you it is about the dream of beloved community, you understand that you are the hands and the feet of that value, of that wholeness. And it doesn't happen without you. That's incarnational. You incarnate what you hold to be true. Relational means, now Jake, what was that term someone used the other day? Charity to parity. Relational is about creating relationships. It's not about driving across town to the poor part of town and serving some people some soup and you don't even know their names. It's about creating relationships. That's a big part of about being missional. And one very large church that we visited, some of us, was Ginghamsburg. And one of their ministries, right in their own neighborhood, is every Sunday they have breakfast, not only for their church members, but anyone in the community. And they have an omelet bar there. The reason why they have an omelet bar is because you have to have a conversation with them, even if it's just to say, I'd like mushrooms and cheese. But that's why they do it. So that you are having a conversation, you are creating relationship. And the other issue is positional. This idea of being a missionary and going to where the need is. Now it may be, like in Ron Robinson's case, going to Turley, Oklahoma, finding an abandoned part of the empire that needs your help, that you can transform. And that is wonderful. And if you do that, man, I'm going to be cheering you on. For some of us, that's, we have a mortgage and kids, and that's not a life change we can make right now. But we think about our own spheres of influence. And so if I'm coaching my son's soccer team, I am always on mission. And when I go coach his team, I am trying to live out my values. It is in the way that I treat people. It's not all about inviting people back to my church. If that happens, that's terrific. But it's, again, incarnational. It's incarnating my values in the different positions and going to where the people are rather than simply saying, come to us.
So my congregation, or the congregation I serve in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, has been the model of patience with me, waiting for me to kind of get a clue. It took a few years because when I came in, I thought that Alban Institute was writing the Holy Gospel with their emails every Monday about how to, strengthen organization, how to, and all toward the great golden dream of growth. I got this letter from one of the church founders once that said, Jake, sometimes you talk as if we don't understand pastoral to program, and you have actually told us about this a lot. And my response was to send him another explanation of pastoral to program. See, that's why I'm saying that they've been patient with me, because it really was only later where I started to figure out that the congregation had understood its mission and its place all along, which was to be there in the community of Oak Ridge. Now, Oak Ridge was a city that was founded as part of the Manhattan Project in World War II. It used to understand itself as an oasis of PhDs, the most PhDs, in the midst of some of the poorest counties in East Tennessee. In my neighborhood now, when a 90-year-old physicist or scientist dies, there's a young adult family moving in from the counties. Oak Ridge is going through a sea change. There is some new development, and the future is up in question about what is the demographics going to look like. One thing that's clear, though, is that from the middle class assumptions that have been there for so long, now there are so few services. As I have been able to sort of let go of that addiction to growth and to more, and to sort of see where the people of the church were led, we are starting ministries like this Stone Soup ministry, which is a monthly meal for folks who are homeless. But the thing is, here's something to know about it. Not only are homeless people coming to it, but also elderly, also some people, members of the church, who just, are living alone and need to eat meals with somebody. Not only is it sort of an us-to-them feeding operation anymore, but now some of the diners are coming around back of the counter and helping cook and helping clean up. There's, as I said before, I have been a staunch institutionalist concerned with the precision of bylaws and policies for a long time. So part of my recovery is being okay, living with the mess. This is not, I will say, though, a matter of the congregations and beyond. This is not a matter of these new forms or new things in the 21st century, because it's back to the purpose. If we are doing new forms of ministry for the sake of bringing them to us, then we are still in that old attractional model, to bring them to us. How can we get them, more of them, whoever those them are, to show up with us, be part of us? That is the different question than how can we love the hell out of the world?
And talking about this shift from being attractional to being missional, going from trying to bring people into us to bringing our values out to the people, is a conversation that has been taking place in many contexts. In some ways started in the Christian context. And we've got a little video to show you that, just about 2 minutes long, that really introduces how this applies, particularly in a church context. Now, I will note, this video was prepared by Christians for Christians, and some of that theological language is in there. We trust your abilities to translate.
This is the missional church. Simple. In the past, churches have spent large amounts of resources to construct the most attractive places imaginable for the community in which they were situated. Great music, compelling teaching, and a host of programs designed to gather people together were the staple of such church communities. Anyone who wanted to come was welcome, and church members were encouraged to invite their friends and neighbors. Generally, people had a pleasant experience. The people who came and were cared for seemed relatively similar. Education, income, pastimes, race, struggles, and histories seemed to be almost identical. Eventually, someone asked the question, what about all the people who aren't like us, but who live around us? Why aren't they here too? In response, the church increased its marketing budget, direct mailing the community, taking out ads in local papers, buying radio time, releasing a fresh web page, and offering to host the world's greatest event. The church was determined to be the center of everything great that happened in the community. Church members began to rely on the church to do the work of conveying God's story in the world. If someone could be brought to an event, they could hear about Jesus from a professional teacher. Inviting people became synonymous with evangelism. The missional church, on the other hand, empowers its members to be the church in the community. The church trains, resources, encourages, and challenges its people to live out the good news in their community with those who would otherwise be suspicious of a church and its marketing efforts. The church sends out its members to live among people unfamiliar with church customs, songs, and what it holds sacred, just like a foreign missionary. The missional church recognizes then that every believer embodies the life of the church in their neighborhood, in their school, or at their place of work. Each one of them telling God's story in the context of compassionate and genuine relationships.
My example for this little section is going to use a community garden. Anybody in here involved with community gardens? Wonderful, excellent. So y'all know a little bit about where this is going to come from. What do you do if you want to start a community garden?
Apply for a grant from the city.
Apply for a grant from the city. What else do you do if you need to start a community garden? Huh? Find a community. Get people who are willing to help. People in a neighborhood. People who love to garden.
Plant a seed.
Plant a seed. You know what you need to do to start a community garden? You get a shovel, you dig up some earth, you put a seed in it, and you water it. Now, if you want to start a community garden, what do we usually do?
We have a committee.
We have a committee meeting. And after 6 months of getting through the green committee meetings and get passed to the board needs to consider it for another half year. And then a half year after that, we'll give it to the finance committee to see if we can afford to buy the seeds and the fertilizer. No! You want to start a community garden, you find some land, you get some seeds and a shovel, you find your community, you get your neighbors, you invite them to come down and help, and you start a garden. And the reason we don't do this is we don't know why we do anything. Because if we knew the why, if we knew that the reason we were making a community garden is to give people better, healthy, available, locally grown food at a low cost right here, instead of having them live in a food desert or spend exorbitant amounts of money on, mass-produced, scientifically crafted food-like objects, right? If we know why we're doing the community garden, getting it done doesn't have to be such a problem. But we don't learn to do this. We have created a culture that is not permission-giving. We love process. And then people ask us, well, how are you going to get the community garden done? What's going to be needed? Well, you know what? The answer to how is yes. The answer to how is yes. When people start asking how, or what do we need to do, these questions are not so much really objective curiosity about what's being proposed as an expression of fear and doubt. Because the reality is we have the resources available to change the world in the way the world needs changing for the good. And our fears and our doubts keep creeping in, and the more we ask how and the more we ask what, the less we have to figure out why. And so we retreat into the safety of our fear and doubts, and in our churches, usually our process. We use process to hide fear and doubt many times. And it's not saying we don't have good processes sometimes. You need those to run anything. But often, we don't accomplish what we are called to do because we're scared. We're afraid to be given permission. And in order for mission to succeed, you need to be able to risk, and it needs to be okay to fail. Two things that aren't very good in our congregational cultures. That's a big shift. You need to be able to answer how with yes. What's the why? What's the reason we are doing this? Why are we here? That gets hard for us because a lot of our churches don't have a guiding why. We have mission statements, but not missions. We have vision statements, but not vision. Because when we know why, it gets really simple. Are we going to change the world one life at a time? Are we going to be the center of mercy, mission, and transformation? Well then, is what you're going to do match up with that? Yes. Figure out how to do it. Joanna talked about the Kingdomsburg church we went to visit, right? Very big church. No money whatsoever goes to any committee or any group to do anything. Everyone in the church is in a small group of 10 people that meets twice a month. And their charge is, how are you going to serve your community, your neighborhood? When they come up with good ideas, they don't petition the finance committee for funding. They go raise it themselves. Because what they're working on is a project of their heart, and it needs getting done in their community to make it better. They answer, how, what are we going to do with yes? And they find ways within their resources, or they create resources to get it done. And sometimes it's risky, and sometimes you fail.
So understanding why we do what we're called to do is so vitally important and so prior to understanding how we're going to do it. But that's not just true for the church as a whole, it's true for each of us individually. One of the great pushbacks that we often hear about how can Unitarian Universalists be missional is we don't even know what the hell our mission is.
Amen.
I'm not saying there's no truth to that. I'm saying it's the wrong way of looking at it because this is not just about what the mission of Unitarian Universalism can be. It's also about what your mission is. It's about what Lori's mission and Cindy's mission and Daniel's mission. It's what your mission is as well. And the church becomes, in the missional understanding, not a way of bringing people into the faith. It becomes something far better. Something which our Sister Joanna has wonderfully expressed with the phrase that we gather to strengthen our souls. We are sent out to strengthen the world. So what we do when we gather includes helping one another and helping ourselves to find our own personal mission in life. Those values that spark within us so deeply and that help us to find, yes, our call. Yes, the four of us presenting this all happen to be ordained and fellowship ministers. And we frequently speak about calls to ministry. And nobody up here believes that you have to have an ordination and preliminary fellowship to have a call to ministry. Everybody in this room has a call to be of service in this world and to embody and to incarnate what your deepest and most ultimate values are. And when we come together in churches, we can strengthen each other in the discernment of working through what that call can be and finding ways to ground our life, our work, our service in what is ultimate for us.
How would you like to meet some of the people around your neighborhood today? Oh, who are the people in your neighborhood? In your neighborhood, in your neighborhood. Say, who are the people in your neighborhood? The people that you meet each day.
If your church closed its doors today, would anyone notice? Any one of your neighbors in the mile, think about the mile around. Do you know who your neighbors are in the context where you are? Do you know your neighborhood? Do you know the resources in your neighborhood, the great gifts and character and culture? And do you know the great struggles and pain and challenges of your neighborhood? There's a story of a church in North Carolina, I think, that burned down, and the next day, people were showing up from all over town, asking how they could help, because the relationships were there. They didn't have to create the relationships out of crisis. Rather, it was the community's practice of being in relationship already, and the community's ability, the congregation's ability now to receive, because these were relationships of parity and not charity. So this is just a question to think about. Have you walked around the neighborhood where your church is, or rolled around? Have you Have you talked with folks out there? Do you know what's going on in their lives? Do you know what's going on in your life?
All right, we're going to do a little interactive piece here. And we're going to talk about your neighborhood. So if you came with someone to this workshop who's from your church or from your city, please work with them. Keep your group small, 2 to 4 people max. So you're going to pair up with people around you, and we want to talk about the neighborhood your church lives in. Not where you live. Where that meeting place is of your group of people of faith together. What's that neighborhood like? I want you to get together with 2 to 4 people, hopefully people from your own place, your own church, your own area. And I want you to ask these 3 questions about that neighborhood. Ready? What's the neighborhood's greatest asset? What's the neighborhood's greatest need? And what kind of church do they need in that neighborhood? Go ahead. How much time they got? Short.
Thank you for coming back. I love seeing all these great conversations happening. So the church that we referenced before, Ginghamsburg, they are also a multi-site congregation, and they went to a church that was dying near them. And they made the agreement that they were all going to join together. And for the first 3 months, all that they did was go into the neighborhood around this satellite, Fort McKinley, talking to neighbors, asking them what they needed. They asked them, and most of us, including me, probably wouldn't feel comfortable with this, but it did get them a lot of information, was saying, we'd like to pray for you. What do you want? If I can pray for you, what do you want me to pray for? And you get real honest answers that way. So we have to find our own language around that. But they found out the need. And in fact, that is what led to the omelets, because their greatest resource was people, but the people were hungry. So I just like to know, what are some of the things that came out? Just want to spend about 5 minutes kind of hearing what are some of the things that you talked about with these questions. And you can either come up here or take that mic.
Out of that. Okay. My name is Linda, and I'm from San Diego County, California. The church I go to is Summit UU Fellowship, and it's about 20 miles east of where I live because my friend was the DRE. So we went there, and my kids love it, and so do I. Regarding the neighborhood, we connect with other organizations, and we do not connect with people of the neighborhood.
So does anyone, what we'd like to hear is asset, need, and the church that your neighborhood needs. Something, or whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Kate, and I come from Durango, Colorado. We have an absolutely beautiful church, and we are a fellowship, and we're the oldest fellowship in Unitarian Universalist. Well, how do you say that? And some of our members are exceptionally wealthy. They're retired and they're just wealthy. We don't know much about our neighborhood. Some of us live in the neighborhood, but the question is a minister. And our wealthy people have decided that we need a minister. And so we're divided. Half and half. I do not know what will happen. I'm sure we'll get a minister, and it will be very different. And about the neighborhood, I really cannot say, which surprises me.
And maybe when you go back, that can be one of your questions is, you know what, we've talked about what we need and want, but what does the neighborhood want? What does the neighborhood need?
Hey, I'm from Oak Ridge with Jake. So we did a lot of brainstorming. We think that some of the greatest resources in our community, which since we're the only church in the town, we just consider to be the town, since we're moving communities soon and we don't know them. But we've got a lot of, like Jake was saying, we have a lot of PhDs, we have a lot of smart people, we have a lot of people with money that really want to engage, I think, but they don't know how. And we don't reach them at their level, like we were saying. The church, the neighborhood that the town needs is engaged. They're a place you could go to. We do social service type things. We do Tabitha Stable. We do Stone Soup. But there's no overarching, and that was our greatest need, is that we've got all these social services. Why don't we have a book or handout or something, just one, that will tell people where to go? Because we've got all this stuff at different places. You know, you can go to this place and about housing and find out where to find a dentist to pull your teeth for $50. But not everybody knows that, because you have to go to all these organizations to find that information.
Sounds like you found both the resources and the need.
Hi, Latifah Woodhouse from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Shelter Rock on Manhasset, Long Island. Our church, as you all may know, does a great work, but it has lots and lots of money. So our big problem is how to work with each other in the congregation because of the control issue over the money. That is our big problem. We do a lot of great work through our Reach program. We work with all the other Unitarian churches. There's a lot of, a wonderful social justice program, but we cannot engage our own people into all that good work. And the neighborhood that the church is called the Church Up on the Hill. It is a magnificent, beautiful, miles and miles, acres of land that we are even not agreeing on how to have a community garden and how to, work together. So we have a big problem in terms of that. And I think the people around the neighborhood, they have the money, they have the talents, they're probably doctors, lawyers, accountants, but the loneliness, and there might be a lot of problems. And I got some great ideas yesterday and also today from this, that we should literally go and knock on their door and say, how could I pray for you? And I appreciate what you guys are doing, so I'm learning a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so we can do this either two ways. My timekeepers are tapping me on the shoulder. So I can either take one more speaker, or if we have some people who can just go asset, need, and church, we can probably squeeze in a few more.
Without the introductions and the explanations.
Yeah.
I can make mine pretty brief. We don't know the need in the neighborhood we're in. And our greatest resource probably is the fact that we've got lots of resource that is pent up wanting to do something, but nobody knows quite what to do with it. And so we don't even know what church our neighborhood necessarily needs.
Thank you.
I figure our need and our resources are very similar because we have a lot of middle-class families that I think really share our values and want to be more active in the community, but don't know how. And so I think if we can engage with them and say, well, how do we serve the community, we can do it together.
I'm from the Atlanta area, and the person I talked to also is from the Atlanta area. And the need that we both see is we're both in fairly affluent areas. There's a fairly large immigrant population that needs assistance. Our assets are we have a lot of members with a lot of money. Some have enthusiasm in specific areas, and where to go from there is somewhat of a challenge.
Thank you. Thank you.
We think we need more youth so that we can have more confidence in our future.
Hi there. What I hear is that our churches are in middle-class neighborhoods that might not need as much help as some of the other neighborhoods. Not so.
Not so.
Alcoholism,
In
domestic abuse,
depression,
mental illness,
alienation,
suffering,
loneliness,
financial strain that's invisible, house rich, cash poor, children home,
lack of mission,
anxiety,
etc. And we don't know this because we don't go out to our neighborhoods, get to know our people, and ask. So it goes everything from
But thank
food to that. Yes.
Thank you so much for bringing that out, because I think that's one of the biggest issues, and it was for me, and that is the idea of the people who have needs are over there, right? Right? I mean, what's our thing that we always say? If you're a good preacher, you're going to afflict the comfortable. I'll tell you, some of you know our theologian, Tandeka, she hates that whole thing about, comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, because the truth is everyone in some way has an affliction.
And so we've talked about how in communities you could recognize and respond to mission. And now we want to ask you in a moment to turn to your neighbor and bring it home, bring it into your heart, into your own life, wondering about your own mission. And so the centering question on this is to ponder and be with and share with your neighbor the answer to the question, to your answer to the question, who does your heart break for? I told a little bit about going into the Army Reserve, because as I've talked to soldiers, especially soldiers coming back, my heart breaks for them. My heart breaks for them. And I don't know what good I can be, but I know that I need to be in relationship with them. Who does your heart break for? Just turn to your neighbor. We're going to take a couple of minutes. So talk, sort of 1 minute and 1 minute with your neighbor.
We hope that you will continue this conversation about who your heart breaks for with people in your family, with people in your congregation, with people in your community, helping each other to discern and find your own personal mission and the why for the groups like churches that you work with. In order to make a shift from a more missional way to live and do church, away from that attractional way of doing life in church, you're just trying to get people to buy what you're selling or come join you or join your club or your group. The missionalist Reggie McNeil says you need to make 3 missional shifts in attitude, approach, and style of how you go about doing things with your thinking as well. The first is from internal to external. Remember the little video we showed you? That a lot of what we do at church is internal focused. Our mission becomes getting together with a group of like-minded people, which you can do at Starbucks or the pub, which are great places to evangelize, by the way. But for a church to get outside of its 4 walls, the main focus needs to be what's outside the church, not what's inside the church. You've got to make that shift from having all the thinking being centered on what can we do here to what does the neighborhood need. And there's always a need in every neighborhood. I think we made that point really clearly, that if it's not a neighborhood of financial need, it's a neighborhood with plenty of other spiritual needs that you can address. But you've got to think outside your 4 walls to do it. The second shift is from programs to people. Many churches end up being program-centered. I'm a big believer that the fewer programs your church runs, the healthier, more vibrant, and more missional it will be. You don't need to run more programs, because the reason we run programs is to attract more people to come buy our goods, our programs. And that's the reverse of this kind of shift. What you need to do is you need to shift to developing people. Does your church or your group, does it have a leadership development track where as soon as anyone comes in as a visitor, they're on a spiritual discipline track to go from being a visitor to being a leader in that community? What's the progression? What does it work? What's the spiritual development? What's the education? How is it all geared to help that person realize who their heart breaks for and get out in the world and make a difference? And if you've got one program that does that, that's the only program you need.
Yes.
Help people find the burning bush in their heart spring, their whatever they've got inside. Get them out of there. You don't need 1,000 different programs, 12 movie nights, 8 book clubs, 7 social events. You don't need that to do what we're talking about. And the third shift is from church leadership to community leadership. When we do that leadership development training, a lot of times what we're doing in our congregations is we're teaching people how to manage a dysfunctional system. What does it say about us that most of our training involves how to manage psychological dysfunction? We need to change that. We need to change that so that our leadership is telling people how to do community development, how to network in the community, how to make friends, how to partner with other organizations, how to effectively get change done in the world outside the four walls of the church. Now, do you need a healthy system inside the church to do that better? Of course you do. But you know what? We never do the other part most of the time. All we do is, how can we better, calm down the person who, corners the congregational meeting or whatever. And the shift we make is away from that towards how do we teach people in our developmental spiritual track through leadership to be people who can realize what their heart breaks for, learn the stuff they need to do to make a difference not only in their lives, but in the lives of the people who are living around you. And again, we'll emphasize that if it's not a place of financial need, it's a place of other needs. And you've got to get out there and make them. Okay? The church is not a destination. It's a launching pad. Anybody fly here?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you come on an airplane?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you went to the airport, why?
To leave.
Oh, so you didn't go to the airport just to go to the airport?
That's far.
If you go to the airport, you can go to the airport just to take a vacation there, right? Go shopping, go to the bookstore, meet other people, hang out in the restaurants. Isn't that why you go to the airport? It's not why we go to church either. It's a launching pad, not an airport. You've got to make these shifts and take off.
Yeah.
We want to get to know you and learn from you and hear from you, and there's two ways that there's a lot of ways we think we can do that. One of them is that in a moment after we're going to have this blessing where we're going to all bless each other, but in a moment we'll have a question and answer piece for the time we have remaining. We also want to invite everyone to come to a Life on Fire conference in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, September 13th to 15th this fall. You can find it on Life on Fire 13. It's on the internet. And also find us on Facebook, friend us, and because we're, as I say, I'm learning from these folks and from some of you already. So we can be part of that conversation. But right now, what we want to do is to ask this group, as you're willing, to take part in a blessing. And so there are some people for whom being touched is just not okay. And so I want to let you know that if being touched is not okay with you, just put your arms up like this, just cross your arms in front of yourself, and you're letting us know, I'm good. But for the rest of you, I want to ask you to lay your right hand on shoulder or arm or some safe place on your neighbor with their permission.
And so, good friends, join us in the spirit of this blessing. For to love the hell out of the world means that you allow yourself to see the hell that is all around.
Addiction, poverty, abuse, hopelessness, and you step into it.
And you love actively with all of your mind, your body, your soul, and your strength.
You give all that you are in service to love, and you allow yourself to be loved in return, and your cup will always be overflowing.
Your love is powerful, and with it you can change things. You can remove hell from people's lives.
And to love the hell out of the world means that you love extravagantly and wastefully.
With no expectation of reciprocation, no demand that the world or the people in it be deemed worthy.
So now after this question and answer session, may you go forth and love the hell out of the world.
Amen.
And for anyone who sticks around even later, we have a closing song. Any Q&A? Any questions? Or answers? We'll take your answers too. Where's those? Because we do not claim to have all the answers. This is new, and we're all figuring it out as we go.
Hi, I'm Marcia Schachtel from the Youth Church of Annapolis, Maryland, and having done a lot of community development work, I think one of the things, right? Yes, exactly. But is that when we think about resources in our neighborhoods, we need to think about the resources that are in our neighborhoods, not just us.
Yes.
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 Amen.
They have their own resources.
Right. And partner with the way that in the Christian missional movement, what they say is find where God is already working in the neighborhood and join with that. Now do your theological translation to join in that.
So when I made my comment earlier, I heard dialogue. I heard people get really fired up. And all of the people that had come before really seemed like, I don't know what there is. I don't know what there is. So could we just yell out those things again so we can all hear them and hear what the needs are around us?
Yes,
I'll jump in on this because I live in a very, very suburban context where this is a common understanding that there are no problems here. All of our lives look like Pottery Barn catalogs, so everything's fine. In my community, there is homelessness. They get exported to the next town over. There is alcoholism, there is domestic abuse, there is emotional abuse. There is a great deal of isolation and loneliness. There are people who are suffering from layoffs. There are financial woes. There are people who are absolutely millions of dollars house rich, but poor both in spirit and in bank accounts. There are people in debt up to their ears and beyond. There are people who believe that if they just get their tummy tucked the right way or go to the plastic surgeon one more time, then finally they'll be an okay person. There is shame everywhere you look.
There's fear everywhere too.
Fear. So I have recently been called to a congregation in Costa Mesa, California. I'm very excited about it. They are in a huge transition in a place of really breaking open, which is wonderful. And I guess what I'm wondering, I'm looking at this going, great. Okay, do you have congregations that have been around for 50 years doing it the same old way that have made this transition or in the middle of making this transition that you can refer me to talk to these people about how they're making that happen?
So I would say that this is a conversation I'm having with my congregation about how to serve the community. And I would say that, we're not using the language of mission or all this sort of theoretical background, but we are trying to figure out how to, because some of the voices I hear is, what about the church members and won't they, and their needs, and what about, we didn't sign up to be, that's part of the conversation. So it's hard, but also that's where the theory gets real, is in real congregations and communities. It takes a lot of different forms, a lot of different kinds of communities. Okay. But you can talk to me and yeah.
Latifah Woodhouse again from the Unitarian Universalists of Shelter Rock. My question is, I was born and brought up in Afghanistan, okay? And I was brought up the way you're all thinking. Love was real, and you reached out and you did things for your community and for your people. What is it, since I've been here, and I've been here for 37 years, okay, in this country, I still can't get it, and I'm a member of my congregation for 20 years. I'm trying to change myself the other way with this process thing, with all of these, how you do it in the society. But it's a cultural thing too, more than anything else, that you have to be proper. Oh, you are really radical. You are taking things out of proportion. You must be in the structure. There is a structure. It's not just Unitarian. It is American. It is, you call the civil societies or whatever that is. It's still foreign to me, even though I have lived longer here. I love what you're talking about, and that is my being and soul, and I don't want to change. Okay.
I'm Miriam from from Portage, Michigan. I'm a DRE. I love this, and I love the way that we're trying to do this in our congregation, working with the Gamaliel Foundation, community organization, interfaith work, great. But I am the big program at my church, and I'm kind of attached to my program. And I wanted to know if had anybody looked at religious education for children and youth, and doing work on that, and can share resources.
Yeah, there are plenty of people doing that, and I want to say, when I hear you say that you're the religious education person, and for my money, faith development is the only program your church needs to run.
And I'd be happy to talk to me about how to redesign faith development to do that work with our kids and adults rather than DRE program.
And we have some DREs who are part. We have some DREs who are part of the Red Pill Brethren, who I can connect you to also.
My name is Colin Woodhouse, also from Shelter Rock. I read Chris Hedges' book, and he said that in the death of the liberal class, the liberal elites have basically destroyed and banished the radicals amongst us. And so the work that you're doing is very dangerous work in many ways, because we're not prepared to accept radicalism. It makes people nervous. My question is, how can we utilize your resources to help congregations such as ours change? I don't think we can do it ourselves. We need some external help. Do you have, where would we go?
Yeah, first of all, go to redpillbrethren.tumblr, which is TUMBLR.com. We keep that, whenever we find good stuff, that's why we put it. If you go back through the archives, like 3 of us went to you keep hearing us talk about Ginghamsburg. When we went there, we put all of our notes up there. After this, we're going to put up a list of some books and some websites that we would recommend. But I think one of the big things is get in relationship with us. Join the Red Pill Facebook page, because the thing is, we're learning from y'all too. And Life on Fire is the big thing.
We've had the UUA in our congregation. We would want